Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled as always to be talking about the wonderful show Taskmaster with Greg Davies and Alex Horne. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is there's this glorious element where there's this structure to every single one of the episodes. You have these bookends of how you introduce yourselves at the beginning. We have that summarization of what have we learned today, with Greg being very much the teacher at the end. But by having that structure and those elements of, okay, well, we know how the tasks are going to play out throughout the episode, it really allows you to find a lot of the spontaneity. And I was interested for both of you in how having elements of structure is actually a real gift when it comes to all of that spontaneity and improvisation.
I think it's comforting to know that something's coming. I think so often we're freewheeling, and we often get asked whether the moments of spontaneity in the studio are genuine, and whether I've prejudged the tasks. And of course, I never have. And so a lot of the time, we're often in a studio improvising for 2 hours, really, and knowing that there's some kind of structure on the way, I find a comfort personally. It's a bit like putting a tea break in or something. But I
Mm,
like it. I like that they're coming, so we can all have a breather after what's inevitably chaos.
yeah, I think that's a good answer, Greg. Well done.
Thank you.
I guess I also like the fact that because it's so not formulaic, but there is a strict format, but it means that every now and again you can change it, and it really freaks people out. If you suddenly, like for the studio task at the end, Greg normally says, "Please go up to the stage for the final task of the show," and occasionally he says, "Please stay in your seats for the final task of the show," and everyone goes, oh my God, they've changed it."
But they
So yeah,
genuinely do in the context of the show. They genuinely are. Like, what? What? We
yeah, yeah.
never go. We always go to the stage.
Alex, I also love how when you come up with the prize tasks that there's this real conduit to getting to know more about people from how they approach it, the way that they interpret it. And so I wanted to ask really specifically about how you think about that when you're conceptualizing them.
Well, I think you might be doing me more credit than I deserve. I think all I'm really thinking is I want it to be funny. So I want to give them the opportunity to bring something in that's funny, but also that all five people will hopefully go in a different direction because we just want variety. We want humor and variety. So I'm not, yeah, it's just done on gut feeling, if I'm honest. You think, yeah, that's, if I was a comedian on it, I could think of something funny here. Um, but you're right. They do their best when it does reflect their real personality and life. I love it when they bring something in that is clearly from their own kitchen. Um, but it's just mainly done on instinct. It really is. And there's a huge list of all the prizes we've had, and I sometimes forget. So the producer Andy will say, "No, we have done that one before." So yeah, I scroll down a list and then he checks it. But we don't know if it's going to work till we do it. And you're right, some of the comedians don't put any effort in at all, and some put in far too much. And
It's always for me. It's a really useful round to sort of. There are often comics who've made no effort whatsoever. There's always one who've literally grabbed the last thing as they leave the house, and I sort of love and am genuinely annoyed by that. So it always helps me get into character.
And I was also really interested in, the health and safety behind a show like this, because you don't ever truly know what contestants are going to do. You don't know if they're going to suddenly try to scale the roof, but also there's certain things that you can plan around without giving away the specifics. There's something brought in on a prize task that health and safety wouldn't actually allow to be used in the studio because it would have been unsafe for the audience. And so I was interested in a lot of the pre-planning and conversations behind the scenes that happen before an episode, but also how it has to be something that's very nimble in terms of keeping the contestants safe as they come up with insane ideas of how they're going to do tasks.
yeah, so for the actual tasks, because the clock starts and then we're off, Vicky, the production manager, has to be on hand. If somebody suggests something, we have a quick conversation and she has to make a snap judgment. I mean, if I'm completely honest, there are more and more health and safety concerns. So they will have to wear helmets and boots if they're doing something where they might smash their heads in. But they tend to look funny in that stuff anyway. And
I
they will
think
always try to get on the roof. Every
I
series they want
think
to get on the
I'm
roof.
right. I was about to say I think I'm right in saying that Jason Mantzoukas tried to get on the roof every task, didn't he?
Of course, he was determined to be the only man to have got on the roof, or woman.
Yeah.
Um, but Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's nimble. We have to be nimble. I like that word. We have to be nimble. I like in other countries, like in Sweden, they don't worry about things quite as much as us. Maybe let's not mention Sweden, but let's just say in other countries, there was a task somewhere else where they had to get the attention of a train driver in any way they could, and they didn't warn the train company. So there were these people flagging down the train and pretending someone had died and setting fire to things. We're not allowed to do that anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, it's potentially the bane of our life, but we're yeah. So far, it's been
So
fine.
so far, there's not outside of a minor accident with you. We've not had anything, have we? Touch wood.
No, not with the contestants, but I got hurt, and we're not allowed to talk about that.
We're not allowed to talk about it.
And you mentioned Jason Mantzoukas, and he's such incredible casting throughout this entire season, and he's such an agent of chaos, intentionally every single episode talking about how he intends to destroy as many things as he can and cause
Yeah.
production to cost as much money as possible. And I wanted to ask you both about how that casting was so specific and brought in such a wonderful energy, but also how it probably superseded and went well beyond your expectations of what you imagined it was going to be like.
Well, Jason came to us is the first thing you should know. That he asked us if he could be on the show, and
Mm.
it was really unexpected. We've had Americans on the show before, but never any that aren't based in the UK. So him sort of saying, "I'm prepared to come to your country to be in this show" was pretty joyous.
Yeah,
And in
at a
terms
loss, I
of
think. He basically had to pay to do the show.
yeah, he made a point of telling us a few times that he was operating at a loss. But I thought his energy was wonderful, and and he did smash a lot of things up. But I think the thing for me that's interesting is that it was more often than not after the task had been completed. So I don't know whether it was a release of energy for Jason or just grandstanding, but yeah,
Mm.
he
I mean,
smashed things up when it made no difference to the points that he would get.
yeah. But I'd say also the first time we met him, he did come with this Hollywood energy that British comics tend not to have. There's something about it, this crackle of charisma.
And
So
confidence.
yeah, yeah. He's been on film sets and he's done everything. And now he's in our tiny little cottage in London. It was very strange having him. And then he went further by smashing things up and being extraordinary. So yeah, it was really exciting, and it's lovely that we can still have exciting things in season 19. It
And
didn't. It
he's
did.
incredibly sarcastic about a show that he clearly loves. That,
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
in our little trailer, there's a moment where he sort of sarcastically says, "Oh, this season's theme, science." So he was constantly mocking the format of the show that he volunteered to be on as well. I mean, I thought he was a wonderful, chaotic presence.
And in talking about one of the other contestants with Matthew Bainton, I wanted to talk about his outfit because he has the tiniest shorts known to man with a very large sports vest. And one of the episodes, you've had to actually blur out a huge amount as he's crawling around on the floor to complete a task. But I've heard him say in an interview that actually he had the idea of what he wanted and the idea of looking like he was competing in the Olympics for the humor, but having production source the outfit. And so I was curious about how production decided to source the tiniest shorts that led to that throughout that episode.
that's a good
Well,
question.
I I think I don't know that I'm ruining some magic here or not, but I think it's one of the best jokes in this season, and it's not a joke by Alex and I. It's a joke by production or by the editing team. That often his private area was pixelated to suggest that he was exposing himself when he actually wasn't. And it was something that continually irritated Matthew, where he
Yeah,
would say, "Well, I'm not exposed there, but you've made it look like I am,"
yeah,
as an extra joke. And I think it's a great joke. So sometimes Matthew is exposed, and sometimes he isn't.
yeah. I mean, I would say I was in the room. Sometimes he definitely was, and
Yeah,
there's things
yeah.
I've seen that I didn't need to see. But yeah, it was very funny. He would got so infuriated with the idea that his testicles were always out. But anyway,
And Matthew he couldn't be a bigger contrast to Jason. He is a very, very English man. And the idea of exposing his genitals on a family-friendly show would be fairly mortifying for him.
Alex, there's also a task in the season where you're made to be much more confrontational with the crew working around you.
Mm.
And it was interesting watching you watch the footage back of that because it actually feels like that's maybe the highest level of discomfort that I've ever witnessed you
Yeah.
experience on the show.
Yeah.
And did you find that that was harder to do and harder to watch back than any of the humiliating things you've been made to do over 19 seasons?
You're very insightful. It was awful because, there's real problems in our industry of men, particularly being bad to employees, or people who are in theory lower than them on the career rung. And then suddenly I'm doing it on telly and trying to and making out that it's funny. So, it's such a delicate line between is that funny or is that an awful representation of the world? And I think hopefully because we are, I hope, nice, we can get away with that because it's clearly a joke. But yeah, I did not enjoy that one bit. But whereas Greg really enjoyed my discomfort, I think.
I really did, and conversely, I enjoy the being given the opportunity to be mean to people because it feels like pantomime, it feels like
Mm.
silly pantomime. But Alex would never even enjoy mock cruelty.
And Greg, in talking about the comedic back and forth that you have with Fatia throughout this season, she very much makes a lot of jokes about being in pursuit of you and planning the wedding that you're going to have, that it's going to be a very
Yeah,
expensive wedding with all of her family members. And there's a point where you say, I feel hunted right now. And so I wanted to ask about how the two of you really lent into the humor of that as you realized how funny it was and how much you could mine it for.
I I I I don't think I've ever been aggressively wooed before, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm also, it's difficult in my position with someone like Fatia. It's difficult because I'm supposed to be an authority figure, and that is a woman who is not intimidated by authority in any way. And so the only way of me maintaining any dignity within that dynamic was to go with it to some extent. But outside of the world of Taskmaster, I'm pretty sure that I would be the beta in that relationship. But I find Fatia extremely funny, so it was easy to go along with it.
She also joins a wonderful group of previous contestants in terms of contestants that come on the show and basically say, I'm going to do the task how I want to do it rather than how you've instructed me to do it. But also, I think, like all of them, you also see this vulnerability and this softness at the same
Mm.
side. And I was interested for both of you in how, whenever contestants come in and are a little bit resistant to some of it, how ultimately they always break into the format eventually.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
and I
this is
think
such a
Fatia did
super.
as well, didn't she?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
when people say you go on a journey on a TV show, they're not talking about Taskmaster, but I do think you do a little bit, and over 10 weeks, you have to reveal your true side a little bit. And yeah, in that very first episode, she sort of refuses to do the studio task, which is really interesting, and she holds her own and just doesn't say, "I'm not doing that," which is fair enough. You don't have to. But I liked she held her dignity, and but yeah, you really see a soft side to her occasionally, these glimpses, and I really enjoy that. And I think one of the strengths of the show is that you do get to know these people over 2.5 months. And I'm looking forward to. I think she might have the strongest reaction amongst viewers because
And I think it's interesting that, being aggressive, whether it's aggressively flirtatious or aggressive full stop, is sort of a bit of Fatia's comedic shtick, and she does it beautifully. But as Alex says, it's one of the things I love about the show is that there's no hiding place on the show. Ultimately, you do inevitably reveal things about yourself that you perhaps wouldn't want to on the show. And I think Fatia often shows what a fundamentally sweet person she is, and she'll hate me saying that, but
mm,
I think it's pretty much there.
You mentioned that everybody breaks a little bit eventually, and there's one episode where Stevie is suddenly having that crisis of self throughout every single task in the episode. And I think it's such a great example of the way that people come in with a certain idea, and maybe they lose a little bit of the humor, or they have to confront certain things about themselves. And when you watch Stevie have that breakdown, what was the experience of seeing someone like her, who's so affable and so positive, have a moment like that?
Well, in the house, they do sort of 7 or 8 or even 9 or 10 tasks in a day, and they go through the ringer because they want to do well, and they're in isolation. They don't know how the other people are doing, and she was quite broken by the end of the day. And I tend to think I quite like it when people arrive tired or even jet lagged in Jason's case because their brain goes to a different place. So yeah, I have this slightly awkward thing. I'm a friend of Stevie's, and I really enjoyed her being upset because I know it's going to be funny. I mean, she wasn't really upset, but she was frustrated with herself. But I've had the same with lots of my friends. Like Mark Watson got genuinely angry when he did it, angry with me, and I just know it's really good telly. So
But
you
I
sort
have
of
to
have to.
say, I don't think Stevie losing it was a great shock. I didn't feel that. I felt that it was just beneath the surface, the capacity to lose it throughout Stevie's time on the show,
Mm,
and she's very funny and very clever. But I felt that she was on the edge throughout personally. So when she did
yeah,
finally, I went, well, at last.
yeah. Her and Rosie are quite a funny comparison because they're similar age, but Rosie's a whole different person. Obviously, and that the show does show how different people are. But yeah, they couldn't be much more different. Rosie's pretty together. She's pretty. She can pretty much do anything. I think partly the mother in her has given her a lot of tools in her toolbox.
Yeah.
And in talking a little bit more about production, I love the camera work. You know, essentially for all of the tasks, you've always got certain elements of fixed cameras throughout the Taskmaster house. But the way that the camera department in the Taskmaster house and in the studio for all of the tasks there kind of move around, and they never have a set plan. They can't know where someone's going to go, what room they're going to run into, if when they're going to try and climb the roof of the Taskmaster building. And I was interested for both of you in just the experience in terms of what you see and how they really elevate the craft of the show so much.
Well,
Yeah,
our director will be thrilled with this question, and it comes from the top down really with Andy Devonshire, who is, I'm sure you'd agree, Alex, is hugely responsible for the way the show looks, and
mm.
his team are amazing at the visual side of it.
Yeah. I
Alex?
mean, they take real pleasure, much more, and real care over the look of the show. And they each series are trying to make it slightly different and make it filmic. And but Greg much more than me, have done a little bit of drama, as in acting, where you have to do take after take after take. And I think for me, one of the joys of Taskmaster is that you don't do that, and it's all on the fly. You have one go at it, but they have to really react quickly because they've got only one chance, and often it's a moment we're not expecting because somebody's thrown something at something or dropped something or whatever. So they have to really react quick, and they are an amazing little team, tiny team as well. It's only two and a half camera people, one sound person. That's it. So they use a
Yeah,
lot
no,
of.
the coverage they get is incredible, really, considering
Mm,
it is a fairly small guerrilla unit for most of it. Yeah.
yeah,
And lastly, you always talk about how every single group of comedians that come onto the show have such a unique group dynamic and such a unique chemistry. And with this group, it feels like they're very affable and they're competitive, but they're also happy to lose and just have fun. And enjoying the task seems to be the most important thing. And I was
Yeah,
curious if that was kind of the realm in which you found with them very early on, or what some of the other specificities of their chemistry was for you.
that's true. Actually, we normally have an uber competitive person, and
mm.
I don't think we had one this time, did we?
No, I mean I might be generalizing, but when we have three women as opposed to three men, it does sometimes feel a less competitive, as in a no less funny, but sometimes a nicer show because men are worse than women. I don't know if that's true when you look back over the series, but I don't know. It just feels a more balanced show sometimes. But yeah, they did get on, but they were
Although
so
there are,
different.
of course, many wonderful competitive women.
Oh yeah, I've definitely said the wrong thing somewhere along the line in that sense.
No, but I know what you mean, and I think if we went through the show, invariably those uber competitive people would be more often men than women. Yeah.
Yeah, but they were competitive absolutely enough to make it entertaining. They still wanted to win. But I think this five are really different from one another, and that really works. I guess sometimes if you have two, for example, men in their 30s who want to win, that's a similar dynamic. Whereas none of this five felt like they were coming at it from the same angle. They came from very different points and met in this weird crucible. So yeah,
I
that worked
I
for me.
think there was a real competitiveness to Jason. I think there was the an underlying sort of he wanted to achieve something out of the show and was on his own agenda, but I don't think it was victory. I think maybe I think maybe he wanted to carve a name out for himself in some way, but not necessarily by lifting the golden head. I think it was
Mm.
more, you will not forget me. And he was very successful at that.
I think every single season has things that make it really wonderful, and this season especially feels like such a strong season with such a fantastic group. So, congratulations on an amazing season 19, and thank you so much.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you. I think it's one
thanks,
of the
Mara.
best. I'm glad you liked it, Mara.